Hello, so we're going to have a look here at question 1C, and this question was specifically focusing on Costa and around the topic of corporate social responsibility. So the specific question was assess the impact of being more socially responsible on a business such as Costa. So first of all, obviously we want to start off with a definition, and obviously we can start by defining corporate social responsibility. So define corporate social responsibility, or just abbreviate it to CSR. So a definition of corporate social responsibility would have been a really good way to start the answer. Okay. And then we can look at particularly, first of all, a positive impact of Costa being more socially responsible. So let's have a look at a positive point that we may wish to talk about. So obviously they're looking to recycle cups. We're told that in the case study that they're going to try recycling cups because what we see in the case study, none of the 2.5 billion cups thrown away are recycled. So none of the cups are recycled, and that number of cups totals to 2.5 billion. That's an awful lot of cups. Okay, so what they're going to do is they're going to recycle the cups. What that therefore is going to allow them to do is it's going to differentiate them from competitors. And those competitors are going to be Starbucks, for example. Cafe Nero, that may be another competitor. Okay, so recycling cups is going to differentiate Costa from their competitors, such as Starbucks. As a result, by differentiating them, this should attract socially responsible customers. So this should attract socially responsible customers. This may mean that customers move away from competing firms such as Starbucks and come to Costa instead. Move from Starbucks to Costa. And obviously by them moving from Starbucks to Costa, this could allow an increase in market share for Costa. Okay, so that's a really good point that we've made. So we've talked about Costa are going to recycle cups. It's differentiating them from competitors such as Starbucks. That's going to attract socially responsible customers, and therefore customers may move from Starbucks to Costa, increasing the market share for Costa. What that may therefore bring is additional benefits which we may wish to have talked about, and this really develops our analysis further. So a market share increasing for Costa, this could alleviate them increased power over suppliers, for example, and that could allow them to benefit from economies of scale, and it could increase power over customers, and that could allow them to increase their prices, for example. Okay, so we've taken our increase in market share point a little bit further and said how that can be even more beneficial for the business. Okay, so it's a really good point to make about how market share would rise as a result of recycling cups. However, we now want to consider a evaluative point to go with this. Is it necessarily going to be as good? So I've put a negative sign there just to represent it's going to be kind of a negative point that we're going to talk about, a negative impact, obviously. Obviously, they are removing recycling logo from their cups. Obviously, as it says in the case study, the cups have to be specifically recycled at a particular plant. They can't just be recycled in your typical manner. They have to go to a specific place. So therefore, in order to prevent misleading customers, they're going to remove their logo from their cups. Obviously, removing their logo from the cups is going to come at an extreme cost, because obviously they've paid for all these cups to be produced that they would have used. However, those cups are no longer going to be used, and they're going to have to purchase some new cups with new designs on them. So that's going to cost an extremely large amount of money. So removing cycling logo from their cups, new cup design needed, as well as new cups. What this is going to do, it's going to significantly increase their costs. Okay, so now we can make this response even better with the type of cost that we focus upon, and then the development of that. Okay, so a cup is going to be a variable cost. So costs, in particular, variable cost, because obviously in order to produce a cup of coffee, you need a cup to go with it, to hand it to the customer. Okay, so it's going to be a variable cost. It's determined, the number of cups is going to be determined by the amount of output, the number of cups of coffee are produced. Okay, so increasing the variable cost now. What can we bring in now? Well, we can bring in break even, can't we? Because we can talk about how variable cost impacts upon the break even point. So obviously the variable cost is going to lead to an impact on the contribution per unit. So contribution per unit is obviously calculated by selling price minus the variable cost per unit. So what we see here, if the variable cost has increased, this therefore means the contribution per unit is going to decrease. Okay, so contribution per unit decreases. And we've just added that arrow in there. The contribution per unit decreases, and what that's going to do is that's going to increase the break even point. So Costa will have to produce and sell more cups of coffee in order to break even, and therefore it's going to take longer, or more cups of coffee are going to be needed to be sold in order to make a profit. Okay, so that's a really good point. We've brought in another theory there with regards to break even. It's a really well developed point there. Okay, now let's have a look at another positive point that we may wish to talk about. And this point, we're going to talk about reduced labour turnover. So you may say, why are we going to talk about labour turnover? But there are people in the workforce who want to be associated and work for businesses which show social responsibility. Okay, and therefore people are more likely to stay with them because they feel that the business represents the values that they stand for. So I'm just going to move the piece of paper up. So reduce labour turnover. Employees wish to remain with Costa as the values of the business are the same as theirs. Okay, so reduce labour turnover. Employees wish to remain with Costa as the values of the business are the same as theirs. And that connection with the business is therefore going to mean that they don't leave. So what does that mean for the business? Well, reduced labour turnover is going to reduce training costs, because obviously fewer new staff are going to need to be trained, because obviously the majority of staff are now staying because they feel that the business represents the values that they hold close to themselves as well. So reduced training costs, and obviously this may lead to an increase in profits for Costa because they're not having to spend as much on training. It's a nice point to mention there. And then we obviously want to counter that. So, however, an issue that may be faced by Costa is that competitors such as, or name a different competitor, so Cafe Nero, may copy. So obviously Costa here have looked at introducing recyclable cups and a specific way to recycle them. Competitors such as Cafe Nero may copy. So what this may mean is there's only going to be a short-term increase in customers for Costa, as in the long term competitors also introduce recycling schemes, and therefore as a result we may not see an increase in market share, for example. Because customers remain loyal to a brand. Okay, so that's what we want to talk about there, that the idea that competitors may quickly copy what Costa Coffee have done, and therefore it's only going to be a short-term increase in the number of customers for Costa, as in the long-term competitors also introduce recycling schemes, and therefore there's no increase in market share as customers remain loyal. As customers remain loyal to a particular brand. So they may stay with Starbucks because now Starbucks are offering the recycling scheme. And also Cafe Nero may also be offering the recycling scheme as well. So they may just remain loyal to the brand that they've always gone to, because all the major coffee outlets are doing exactly the same thing. And then finally, what we just need is a quick judgment at the end to sum up our response. So our judgment is we're going to basically say, is it going to be a positive or negative impact due to Costa being more socially responsible? And all we're going to do is explain why. So I may argue that yes, it is going to be a positive impact on Costa because their market share should increase, and that should allow increased market power for them because more customers would move over from competitors. That would be my short, simple argument, backed up by what I've already talked about in the case, in my response. And then finally, we need a depends on factor. And then we need to explain it. So the depends on factor here may be that it depends on whether the move by Costa is viewed as a PR stunt. So obviously what Costa may do is they may just trial this scheme out and see how it goes and currently get a big buzz around them being more socially responsible, and obviously that improves the brand image of Costa. However, what may happen in the long term is that they actually may decide, well, actually, this isn't really viable. We're not going to do it anymore. So obviously it's only short term. Or it may just continue, but only a very limited number of stores, therefore limiting the negative impact. Okay, so it depends on whether the move by Costa is viewed as a PR stunt. If so, if it is viewed as a PR stunt, customers will remain loyal to their brand, and therefore no increase in market share. And the reason why this is a really good judgment is because it's a new piece of evaluation that we've brought in that really ensures that our answer has a really good balance to it and shows a greater element of thinking about the impact upon the customer. So just to recap, we talked about answering the question, assess the impact of being more socially responsible on business such as Costa. Obviously, we talked about them recycling the cups, obviously, because none of the 2.5 billion cups that are thrown away are recycled. And hopefully by doing so, that would appeal to socially responsible customers. And obviously that should help to increase their market share by customers coming over from competitors. However, it's going to cost the business, in this case, Costa, an awful lot of money, and that therefore may lead to an increase in the break-even point. Another benefit that they may receive due to the social responsible actions that they've taken, reduced labour turnover. Employees may feel that what Costa is doing sits very well with them, and they want to help contribute towards the positive impacts upon the environment due to the recycling, and therefore they don't have to spend as much on training, and therefore profits may rise. Issues with the actions that Costa have taken, though, are that competitors may just copy them, and therefore the positive benefits aren't necessarily going to be seen in the long term because everyone else just copies. And then finally, our judgment stated that the success and the impact of the move by Costa would depend on whether it's viewed as a PR stunt or not. Do people view it as just a kind of a gimmick to generate a bit of a buzz and get it, hope to have a positive impact? If they do view it as a PR stunt, customers are just going to remain loyal to the brand, and Costa will not see the benefits.